I did want to end this on a cosmic note, just for fun. You often talk about the moon and Mars. What conditions do you think would allow humans to not only survive, but also thrive on the moon and Mars?
It's a strangely relevant question. I mean, I think it's not unlikely that in 2 years, the first landing, we've been to the Mars before, obviously, but the first SpaceX landing on Mars with Starship. And if that's successful, then it is not unlikely that already 2 years later, the first return vehicle could be sent. The idea is to fly to Mars with a return vehicle. So you send an unmanned rocket to Mars. It lands on Mars. Mars is interesting that it's so similar that it's an incredible cosmic coincidence that our nearest neighbor is so similar to Earth. Just an example, Moon, which is of course only 2 days away traveling, has a day cycle, a circadian cycle of 1 month, 28 days. So a night is 2 weeks long and a day is 2 weeks long. So for humans, that's going to be frustrating, right? It's night again. But on Mars, the day is 24 hours and 38 minutes, which even seems like a bonus that you get 38 minutes longer to sleep in the morning, right? So we are fully accustomed to that. That also means that all animals, ourselves included, and also plants are somehow adjusted to that circadian cycle. Then Mars has the same seasonal tilt as Earth, similar. So they have 4 seasons. A Martian year is almost twice as long as an Earth year. And on equator on Mars, on midsummer, the temperatures are like around 20 degrees Celsius, which is like a Danish summer day. Of course, it gets colder at night. It gets quite cold on Mars. No, and then, of course, CO2-rich atmosphere, which means that's what plants breathe. So you could imagine some lichen or other, maybe some... what does a reindeer eat? Lichen, no? Or
Wrong person to ask.
Lav på engelsk? Anyone? Any case. So there's a whole family of Arctic plants that could probably, with a little bit of help, survive on Mars, which means that they could start enriching the atmosphere with oxygen. And then finally, humans have turned out to be very good at global warming. But that's exactly what Mars needs for us to thrive. So the idea of terraforming, making Mars inhabitable in a time span of maybe 200 years, is not entirely unlikely. And of course, 200 years sounds like a long time. You know, it took 1,000 years to make Copenhagen and we still did it, right? And then I think like maybe another aspect, because I often get the question, why should we even think about visiting other planets like the Moon and Mars? And I think part of it is that by definition, we are explorers. And if we agree that mankind evolved in East Africa, I think according to the Genographic Project, we can trace the migration of human DNA from East Africa. I think there's a 60,000-year-old and a 200,000-year-old atom that you can trace back to. And then you can see how, by just visiting indigenous tribes all over the Earth, you can see how mankind migrated all over planet Earth. And you can say like, yeah, but we can't survive on Mars without a lot of technology. Well, good luck surviving the winter in Copenhagen without a house or a duvet and some warm shoes, a little bit of hygge. So I think we wouldn't be able to survive in Scandinavia without a lot of technology that we've already invented, clothing, architecture, heating, etc. We just need to make a little bit more technology and then we can actually potentially thrive on Mars. That said, I would still say that it's still on my bucket list to go to Antarctica, because I think the best test of how it's going to be to live on Mars for the many first decades is like going to McMurdo on Antarctica. Because on Antarctica, you have incredibly cold winters, obviously, and you have a population, I think it's a few thousand maybe, that live in McMurdo, but they don't live there all their lives. They live there for a while, and then they go back. And I think it probably takes longer to travel from Copenhagen to McMurdo than it takes to fly to the moon, because it's 48 hours to get to the moon. I think McMurdo is a bigger commitment. And I also like this idea that we have to remember it's not going to be a one-way ticket, because when Magellan went to South America, it took 3 months to sail there. And when people started migrating to the Americas, it was a risky journey. And in the beginning, it took many months. We can get to Mars in 3 months. Then you have to commit to staying there for, because the next window of return is either immediately when you arrive or it'll be 2 years later. So in that sense, I don't think it's going to be very different from the conditions that people said yes to when they decided to explore the Americas.